Hello and welcome to the Soulful of It podcast, where the cosmos meet the cards and the mundane becomes magical. I'm your guide, 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗀, and in this episode, we'll cover the astrological transits and tarot for the first half of June 2025, with a part 2 episode coming mid-month. Now, let's fill up your cup until you're soul full of it. Welcome back to Soulful of It. It's June and spring is so sprung, it's about to turn into summer. Typically, we jump right into a recap of the previous month and then an overview of tarot cards I pulled for the first half of the month. And we're still going to do just that, but to switch it up, I want to begin this episode by inviting you to take a moment to genuinely check in with yourself. Now, if you're listening to this while you're driving or doing another activity where you can't close your eyes, you can still participate in this with your eyes open or come back to it later on, and it should be really easy to find as it's at the very start of this episode. And that said, I always drop timestamps into the show notes for you to easily find segments that you want to return to later on. For those of you who are able to, please take a moment with me to place a hand on your heart and close your eyes, and let's be really woo-woo about it and take some deep breaths together. Are you ready? Okay. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Deep breath in, deep breath out. And one more deep breath in. And one last big deep breath out. Now I want to ask you, how are you really? Answer that to yourself in one word. Be honest. Even if that word is shitty, or angry, or depressed, or confused. For those of you whose word has a bitter taste, like some of those words, as you think it or even speak it out loud, I want you to play with the opposite. If your word was angry, what to you is the opposite of that word? It may not be the same as the next person, and that's okay. Play with the opposite as though you are planting a seed for it to become your reality. And then expand from there, beyond words, into a phrase, a mantra, or an idea. For example, if your word was sad, and you're going with joyful as the opposite, what does joyfulness in action look like to you? What does it feel like? Perhaps it's singing a song. It's Gemini season after all. Perhaps it's cooking a good meal. Whatever the opposite was for you, and the expansion of that opposite, that is the invitation I want to begin this episode with. Now, I haven't forgotten about those of you whose word for how you really are right now sounds a bit lighter, maybe like peaceful, satisfied, happy, fulfilled. If that was you, I want you to grow a branch, another expansion from that word that already feels good as it leaves your lips. For example, if your word was excited, from that word that already feels good, perhaps a metaphorical branch that you can grow from the word is a mantra, like, I am attracting all the right opportunities at the right time. I invite you to sit with the possibilities that already exist within you. Because now that it's June, we are nearing the halfway point of the year, and it's a particularly potent time for course correction and divine redirection, but nothing takes off without an initial turn of the key to start the ignition. This simple practice of playing with opposites is meant to help bring you into the present moment so that you can more easily see how incredibly powerful you are. The same thing can be said about expanding something that's already good, if you're feeling good. In which case, you go, Glenn Coco. I love that for you. Because thoughts become things, and what you perceive you believe, and what you believe you become. So be picky about your beliefs, and be ruthless in the weeding of your mind garden, only allowing those thoughts that are beneficial to linger long enough to grow roots. You are your greatest teacher, challenger, and lifelong project. It is not too late to go or grow another direction. It is never too late. And you can begin again right here, right now, in this very moment, on this very day. And you're not going to start perfect. It's going to be messy, it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be progress over perfection always. If you're enjoying this practice of holding the both and of our complex human emotions and the thoughts that tend to drive them, then I encourage you to go back and listen to a previous episode. I believe it's number 45, where I interviewed Jana Romer, who spoke about healing from within and the practices she uses and teaches to help herself and others do just that. Now that I've gotten that intuitive pulse to share all of that out, let's get back to our typical format and chat briefly about what took place in the month of May and where that brings us to today before tapping the tarot and chatting about the transits. We kickstart June riding the social breezes of Gemini season, which brought us the start of Pluto's annual retrograde, an emotional Scorpio full moon, that final Sun-Uranus 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗀 in Taurus, which shined a spotlight on what we must change in order to truly feel resourced, Saturn's momentous move into Aries, reigniting fires we haven't felt in nearly 30 years and coming into a direct collision conjunction with Neptune, quick-moving Mercury's return home to Gemini, and an awakening new moon in Gemini that raised more questions than it provided answers. The last few weeks have been curious, clarifying, and somewhat confrontational, at least for some of us. And now, the month of June asks, what do you really need to feel secure, seen, and supported enough to soar to great new heights? The month ahead invites us to slow down, speak with intention, soften our approach, and start turning inward as we prepare for the shift into Cancer season and the return of the sun to its highest point of the year at the summer solstice, which are things that we're going to talk about in the next episode, but are good to keep in mind as they are close by on the horizon. Now, in this part 1 episode covering the first half of June, we're going to talk about Venus returning home to Taurus, Jupiter and Mercury both entering the intuitive waters of Cancer and activating Sagittarius full moon, and a finale of expansion and contraction unfolding on Father's Day. Before we dive into the transits, let's revisit our Soulful of Wisdom spread and chat about the 4 cards I pulled to give us some guidance and some insight for this first half of June. Beginning with, at the center of the spread as the wisdom or the rose, we pulled the 8 of Wands. And we recently pulled this card, so this probably sounds familiar. Maybe you're having a little bit of deja vu, like I am with this card, because it was really, really recently, just last month actually, as the basis or root position in the May Transits and Tarot Part 1 episode, which really stands out to me because I actually don't think that's ever happened before, where I pull a card back to back 2 months in a row like that for this podcast. Now, it's not foreign to me to have that happen in my daily pulls with tarot. Sometimes you feel like you're being stalked or haunted or hunted, or maybe there's another positive way of putting that that I'm not thinking of, when you keep pulling the same card again and again. And so that kind of thing has come up for me before, for sure. But with the podcast, I think it's kind of unique, and there's got to be some significance here that it's coming up again. And it's also interesting to me that last month it was in the root position, and this month it's returned as our center, our focus, the thing that we really need to be aware of. And maybe that's symbolic of how a seed planted in the dark does indeed grow roots as the sun is shining down upon it. And then that's how you get the rose. But when we're looking at the imagery of the traditional Smith-Rider-Waite deck, what we're seeing is 8 wooden wands that appear to be in motion, each with little sprouts of growth, and they're moving through an open sky at an angled downward position towards the right. There's no obstruction, it's just pure linear momentum. And in the background, we see a mountain and a river, which signifies the middle ground between stability and staying where we are, which feels very Taurus season, and movement, or daring to explore new places, which seems Gemini season, but also definitely Sagittarius full moon on the horizon, which, of course, I would say that because there is a Sagittarius full moon on the horizon, and we're going to talk about it, and I'm a Sagittarius, so of course I'm going to say that. So the 8 of Wands is a card that asks you to not only follow what flows, but to seek it, to cultivate it, and to embody it. And by it, I mean movement as medicine. Whenever you pull the 8 of Wands, things are already in motion, and it's your signal to pass go. Capture those intuitive sparks onto paper or your notes app, send that text message, initiate that heart-to-heart, apply for the position, whatever it is. Don't overthink it, because momentum is your ally. Next, we have, in the position of our attention, or the thorns that are crossing the rose in the center of the spread, the 6 of Cups. The imagery of this card features 2 individuals who are often interpreted to be 2 children who are facing each other, and the taller of the 2 is offering a cup that's overflowing with a 5-petaled white flower to the other shorter person or child who is also pictured. There are, of course, 6 total cups present, and in the background we see a man who's walking away holding a staff in his right arm, and a large house that's giving castle vibes in the background. This card is often referred to as an inner child card, as it tends to come up when the past is knocking, bringing sweet nostalgia, innocent joy, and the reunion of connection to family or memories, or the opposite, which could be bad or bitter memories, unresolved trauma, or resentments that stem from some sort of early on origin story, often connected to your childhood. Astrologically speaking, I would say look at your Chiron placement when you pull this card. But I digress. In the position of the thorns, this card is reminding us that the past is a place of reference, not residence. Don't pitch your tents in the old stories you don't like telling or reminiscing about. Paying attention to what's behind you can, in some instances, motivate you, yes, but it can also prevent you from seeing what's right in front of you, or what is calling your name to step forward into the future that you are currently creating. We have to revisit some pieces of our past in order to heal, but we must be vigilant about not allowing our present selves to fracture and forget pieces of ourselves in that past that is no longer currently unfolding. When I pull this card, the 6 of Cups, I think of Byron Katie. If you're not familiar with her, then you are in for a treat because she has so much to offer. And she wrote a book that's called The Work. No, actually, the book is called Loving What Is. That's right. And then her work is called The Work. I could go on and on about this, and maybe I should just go ahead and do a podcast solely about this topic sometime. But one thing that she says in either that book, because I've read it, it's been a couple years, or maybe it was in one of her many interviews. She's on a bunch of different podcasts. You can find her anywhere from YouTube to Apple Music to Spotify, etc. Is that she has this quote that says, "It's not the problem that causes our suffering. It's our thinking about that problem." If I were to reach through this podcast and slap you in the face, first off, that would be fucking crazy, right? Don't worry, it's not gonna happen. But it would also hurt, right? And in an hour, it might not hurt anymore, or not much. In a day, it probably doesn't hurt at all, because let's be honest, I'm not that strong. And in a year, there's no way that me slapping you in the face hurts anymore, right? But if you replay that slap day after day, month after month, year after year, you are still hurting. In fact, you have compound interest on the pain that you suffered from that one slap. And the impact of that slap has doubled, tripled, quadrupled over time. And how so? It's only through the vehicle of your mind. We are so powerful, are we not? And many of us misuse that power, and not always intentionally, by the way. I think often as it's very subconscious, it is very conditioned programming, it's part of the society, the rat race, the game, etc. But we often misuse our power to harm ourselves or others. And so when I see this card come up, I get a really bittersweet feeling, because I know that it's a call to awaken to the present moment and leave the past in the past, which feels like a really perfect segue into our next card, which we pulled in the basis or root position, is Judgment. Now, the imagery of this card in the traditional Smith-Rider-Waite tarot features 6 naked figures rising from stone coffins that are floating on a body of water, I think, as an angel above rings down upon them with the sound of a trumpet as they are all illuminated by the morning light. The 6 figures each have their arms raised up, and they are ready to be reborn into heaven or some sort of other higher calling. The key word I use for the Judgment card is awakening. Another thing that comes to mind with the angel and the trumpet is that this card is one that truly asks us to face the music. The figures are butt-ass naked, which speaks to the requirement to be vulnerable and in our authenticity in order to truly be awakened. Those who are wearing masks, I know it's giving me some like COVID PTSD to say that, but isn't that an interesting analogy? Those of us who are wearing masks, not just the medical kind, also the metaphorical kind, headphones even, or people who are just simply not paying attention, are asleep at the wheel of their lives. This card brings that autopilot energy into question. For us collectively with this card, in the basis or root position, it's an invitation to be here now, which is like a doubling down of the 6 of Cups that came before it. We must come to terms with the past in order to expand beyond it. History repeats itself, they say, and yet I do believe that there are movers and shakers who are meant to break cycles. I saw a post on, I think, Instagram. Maybe it was a Pinterest. I've been on Pinterest lately. Anybody else? Just me? Probably just me. I'm like the only not soccer mom on Pinterest, I'm guessing. I don't know. Shout out to my soccer moms. We love you. Anyways, this post that I saw, and I'm sure I'll never know the original author because the internet is a land of copy and paste. But it said something that stuck with me, which was the quote, and maybe you've seen this before too, "It ran in your family until it ran into you." We have to be brave enough to go against the grain. And that can be in both big and subtle ways. A child raised by a family of doctors and nurses who chooses to pursue a music career is no more or less a failure than their sibling who follows in the family footsteps straight into the healthcare field. They are both pursuing their passions. They are both developing their unique gifts. And they are both giving themselves permission to be who they really are. There's a lot of duality in me giving this example too, which is very Gemini season. And in order to become who they came here to become, they have to be in that authenticity. And Judgment is a check and balance card that asks us, are you living your highest purpose? And what music do you need to face in order to truly awaken? And with all of that said, when I think of the word awakening, it feels a lot like the sun shining on your face, which brings us to the last card that we pulled, which is in the guidance or sun position, is the Page of Swords. This is our other repeat card, which is interesting, how we began and ended this spread with some familiarity. We last saw the Page of Swords back in the February Transits and Tarot episode, which featured our guest co-host Kaylin. Shout out to Kaylin. Go give that a listen if you want to dive into some of her magic. There's so much magic there to dive into. And since I'm talking about co-hosts, shout out to Uni for all the times that he joined us, all the many, many episodes, and of course our girl Katie, Gemini Islander, birthday season happening right now. Always sending love her way. But back to the cards. The Page of Swords in that February episode happened to be in the same position of the guidance or sun, which I find to be really interesting to ponder. The imagery of this card shows a young individual standing on a windy hill with a sword held firmly by both hands. They have both of their feet planted firmly on the ground, their eyes are sharp, and their hair is blowing free in the wind with clouds swirling behind them and 10 birds flying in the distance above them. We've been visited by 3 of the 4 pages so far on the podcast this year, so only the Page of Pentacles hasn't made an appearance yet, and maybe we'll hear from them next month. Actually maybe in the part 2 episode. That would be kind of funny, right? We'll see. Maybe we're manifesting that now. But that really stands out to me because I think it's indicative of us being in some really new energy and being asked to bring some new energy and to play with our youthful disposition. And that isn't based on your age, by the way. You can be very youthful and yet, by our society terms, quote, old. Get that senior discount. Love that for you. But I think that this youthful disposition that we can harness and project and benefit from feeds off of curiosity, and it requires us to have a willingness to try and fail. And those are all qualities of the pages that we can leverage as we continue learning. And Gemini is such an inquisitive sign, and Gemini season is so ripe for asking all of the questions, even those that we do not, cannot, or perhaps will never have the answers to. Sometimes the answer to the question is simply the question itself. For example, does he love me? Well, if you felt loved, you probably wouldn't be asking that question. So, does asking the question confirm he does or does not love you? No, but what it does reveal is that you are not feeling loved by him or her or they. Let's be inclusive here. If you continue digging deeper and you ask the harder question that is below the surface, you may realize that you are not feeling loved by yourself either. Continuing to dig even deeper, you may realize that you have a hard time accepting in receiving love. From him, sure, but also perhaps from anyone, including yourself. I share this example because I think it's very relatable. We have all at some point questioned another's love for us, but many of us simply stop there in the two-dimensional world of black and white that simply is not the only reality at play. The Page of Swords, showing up as our guidance and our sun, wants to help us illuminate the ideas, thoughts, and dreams that are hiding in the shadows. Nothing is as scary as it seems when it comes into the light. Unless, of course, you've been watching The Last of Us, in which case, yeah, those scary monsters can just sit back in the shadows. And I don't need to see them anymore. It gets my adrenaline going. Now that we've tapped the tarot and set the scene, it's time to talk transits, beginning with on Thursday, June 5th, Venus enters Taurus, and Venus is at home in fixed earth sign Taurus, where it will remain for the entire month of June. This grounding Venusian energy brings about a desire to embrace our sensuality, to build towards stability, and to soak in all the beauty that we experience through our five senses. This transit is a great time to practice what feels good, taking care of our minds and bodies through movement, listening to our favorite sounds and music, and following our natural rhythms, like eating when we're hungry instead of when we're bored, or waking up when our body wants to on our day off instead of when we have to because we've got to go to work or fulfill some other obligation. There's a slowing down with Venus and Taurus that invites a type of romance that is very much in the moment. And it's not just romance with a partner, but romancing your life, finding and exploring pleasure beyond that of a sexual nature. And maybe that too. We are invited to enjoy the simple things. The satisfaction of pulling a weed in my yard is the first thing that comes to mind for me recently. I've been doing a lot of weeding. 'Tis the season. Or maybe it's the joy of watching your dog catch a ball in the air. I'm literally just describing my life here, but that brings me so much joy to see my little dog. Okay, she's not little anymore. She's like 70 pounds. Okay, but she's still a puppy. But when she catches a ball in the air, I'm like, damn girl, yes, that is my dog. And it's just those little joys. I mean, it can just be a warm cup of tea before you go to bed. Those little things that help you romance your life. That is Venus and Taurus energy. And I have an invitation for you with this transit that is a solo personal experiment that I definitely saw online. It was just a random video. I should have saved it. And if I did, I'll look, because I do sometimes just randomly hoard and save posts. So I'll see if I can find it. But this post that she put out, this video that this person, I have no idea who this person is. I wish I could credit her. But, you know, like I said earlier, the internet, copy paste, you just don't know. Where did this originate from? Anyways, she plays this game with herself. And the game that she plays, she said, is that she pretends when she wakes up, and this isn't all the time, but once in a while, that day that she wakes up in her current body, at her current age, that she is actually time traveling from when she is elderly and less able-bodied. So it's kind of like the movie Freaky Friday, if you know it, but all on your own. And I think this idea is brilliant because what a powerful reframe it is bringing with it. All of your aches and woes and sadness may melt away with the mindset of gratitude to be who and where you are right now. Can you imagine if you were actually in your 90s and you suddenly woke up in the body that you have now at the age that you're at right now, in the season of life that you're currently in? Wouldn't you be stoked? You could be so sad right now listening to this episode. You could be so broke right now listening to this episode. And yet, if you actually participate in this solo experiment, which by the way, I have not done yet, but fully plan to do during this Venus and Taurus transit, which is why I'm bringing it up as an invitation for you, because I just think it's a really cool concept and idea to play with. But if that were the case, if that were the reality, that you woke up as you are today, wouldn't you think you're so fucking awesome? Wouldn't you be so grateful for so many things that are working for you right now? It's just an interesting thing to sit with. So if that resonates with you, try it out. If it doesn't, find your metaphorical recycling bin and toss it. No ego here. Moving on from that invitation, next we have, on Monday, June 8th, Mercury enters Cancer. And as it shifts signs, Mercury also forms a conjunction with Jupiter. So there's a fusion between our minds, Mercury, and our expansion, Jupiter, that can open doors. And we should all take advantage of that. So mark your calendars for June 8th, because this is the day you want to play with your words in a way that really manifests them into reality. We began this episode with some word play, and a week into June, we will all benefit from the practice of reconsidering the words we use, both those that fall out of our mouths and those that go unspoken within our minds. You don't have to believe me when I say that thoughts become things, but if you can play with that concept for a day and set aside your logic mind to allow your heart-centered and intuitive inner wisdom to shine as a guide, I do believe you will find benefits in that shift of perspective. And Mercury moves fast, so we'll have this transit for just under 3 weeks' time, and as Mercury moves through Cancer, our conversations may dive deeper. We may feel more comfortable being vulnerable, and we may also experience a desire to speak more from our hearts than from our minds. And I think we should all embrace that and get as much out of that as we can during this nearly 3-week long transit before we shift into the month of July. Then, on the very next day, Monday, June 9th, Jupiter joins Mercury and enters Cancer. The last time that Jupiter was in Cancer was between June 25th, 2013 and July 15th, 2014. You can reference back to that time in your life to get a sense of what themes may come up for you again. Jupiter is known as the Great Benefic, and it's exalted in cardinal water sign Cancer, which is an astrological way of saying it's really happy and comfortable being there. And Jupiter takes 12 years to journey through all 12 signs of the zodiac, so with simple math, you can calculate that it spends about a year in each sign. And in this instance, Jupiter will be in Cancer until June 30th, 2026. During this year-long transit, we'll see Cancerian themes coming up a lot more in society and conversations, in television, etc. Things like home and family, which can be blood or water, roots, ancestry, belonging, emotional intelligence, compassion, empathy. A couple things that are coming to mind while I'm talking about this is like the rising of trad wives. If you know, you know. And if you're baking bread, bring it my way. I'm practically a pigeon. I love to get that bread. And another thing that came to mind was the conflict that's going on with 23andMe, with your DNA and ancestry. And if you're into true crime, which don't get me started, the Idaho 4 case that's going to be going on this summer, maybe, hopefully, it's been several years now, that case is connected to DNA that was found from one of those similar types of companies. And if you don't know the scandal that's going on with 23andMe, it's been bought, and anyone's data that's in there can be sold, and genetic DNA data is going to become more and more valuable with time, especially with advancement in technology and AI. And Anyways, I can go down a whole rabbit hole on this topic because I find it to be so fascinating, but I think it'll be interesting to see how those like home, family, literally your ancestry, your DNA, how are those things going to come up in society more? But on like a more personal level, I think just having more connection to family and also rebranding what family looks like and means to you is also going to be something that's really top of mind for a lot of people. So this is a really great time to find your family. And maybe that's like your long lost uncle, or maybe that's like your new best friend who feels like a sister from maybe a past life or something like that. Whatever it is for you, I think that this chapter is going to be really beautiful for everybody, and it's going to bring about a lot of goodness. And my last 2 pennies on this topic is just an encouragement to pull out your natal chart, find the sign of Cancer. If you don't know what that looks like, it's like a 6 and a 9, kind of in a circle. What house is it in? And are there any planets there? This is going to give you a better sense of what arena of your life is going to experience Jupiter's expansion over the next year. And because it's well situated, it's exalted in Cancer, there are a lot of benefits that are going to come from this year-long journey. So I think it's a really exciting transit and one that is a highlight of 2025 and coming at a beautiful time, the halfway mark of the year. Now that we've talked about Jupiter and Cancer, it is time to dive into our next topic, which is a fiery lunation on Wednesday, June 11th. We have the full moon in Sagittarius at 20 degrees, and it's taking place at 12:43 a.m. Pacific time. I had to read it that way because if you rearrange it, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And I just love that synchronicity. Now, the first aspect that stands out to me with this full moon is the grand fire trine that's being formed between the moon and Sagittarius. It's at 20 degrees. Mars is in Leo, 26 degrees. And Chiron is in Aries, also at 26 degrees. So it's exact between Chiron and Mars with the trine, and then it's within a 6-degree orb with the full moon in Sagittarius. So this is a supportive energy with the trine aspect that is making it smoother sailing for us to express ourselves, Leo, by taking action, Mars, to release, full moon, old beliefs, Sagittarius, that will lead us to healing, Chiron, ourselves, Aries. When I say that, taking action, expressing yourself, in regards to your beliefs, what comes up for you? What thought is weighing so heavy on your heart or creating such dissonance within your mind that if you simply let it go, you would immediately feel relieved? That's it. That's the key that opens the door for this full moon, and it's an important one because the next aspect that caught my attention is the sextile between Pluto, who is at 1 degree Aquarius because it moves super, super slow, and Saturn, who's at 1 degree Aries now, fresh arrival, and is also conjunct Neptune, who is now at 2 degrees Aries. This is significant because it's a part of a much bigger picture astrological story that will continue unfolding over the next few years that began this year in 2025. Now, Saturn moves faster than both Pluto and Neptune due to the fact that Saturn is physically much closer to Earth than the outer planets, and astrology is Earth-centered. So Saturn won't remain a part of this aspect configuration for as long as Neptune and Pluto will, but at the time of this Sagittarius full moon, it's very much involved. So what does that all mean? Well, we've talked about Saturn and Neptune recently, but for a refresh, there's a merging of spirituality, Neptune, and structure, Saturn. And with this sextile, which is a 60-degree aspect that brings about excitement to Pluto, we're getting a jolt of energy to embrace change, which is Plutonian, and release, that's that full moon culmination, the rituals and systems, that's Saturn, that aren't working, to serve our higher selves. That's Neptune. And in order to do that, we may need to unearth the beliefs that are keeping us stuck in the systems, habits, relationships, etc. that's holding us back from our true potential and from going on the grand adventures of life that are calling our names. This is Sagittarius after all. And that Sagittarius full moon is knocking at your door saying, sure, that way of living may have once served you, but you are not that same version of yourself. And it's time now to let go of fear and say yes to the grand adventure that is asking you to step forward and expand. Sagittarius is, of course, ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is kind of the star of the show for this episode. And with the recent arrival into Cancer, that's a really great lead into the last aspect that stands out to me, which is the third and final Jupiter-Saturn square, which is exact just a few days after the full moon on Sunday, June 15th, when Jupiter will square Saturn for the third and final time. Now, these square aspects, which is a 90-degree angle between Jupiter and Saturn, began back in the summer of 2024, when Jupiter was in Gemini and Saturn was in Pisces, both on the dates of August 19th, that was the first time, and then Christmas Eve. And then Christmas Eve, December 24th, was the second square. Now, thinking back to those times, is there any conflict that comes to mind? I know for me, there absolutely is, and it's eerily accurate how the astrology played out in real time. And I'm really hoping this third square will be less harsh. And I actually do think that that will be the case. And not just because I'm an optimistic Sagittarius, but because Jupiter is in Cancer and Saturn is in Aries now. That sign shift also equates to a house shift if you're using whole signs. So it's bringing the tension of the last two squares into two different arenas. It's that shift in signs, it's that shift in houses that is going to switch it up for this third and final finale. Because we've got the same players here, we've got Jupiter with the expansion, we've got Saturn with that contraction, but they're playing the game from new stadiums. And the tension's still there, but the environment is different. For some of us, this will come as a relief. For others, it might ignite a finale that could bring about more arguments or grief. And I'm not saying that to scare you. It really just depends on your natal chart. And again, I encourage you to look at that, see where you have the signs of Cancer and Aries, and ask yourself, what are the most challenging things coming up in those areas of your life right now? That is where your focus needs to go. And where Jupiter wants to grow, Saturn wants to slow. Discipline is the catalyst for making your dreams a reality. So embrace the discomfort. It's a sign of transformation. And know that this aspect is going to ease up and dissipate moving forward. The best and worst days have one thing in common. They are both only 24 hours long. So take a deep breath and replay the beginning of this podcast if you need to check in with yourself, and start the shift within your mind that can and will completely change the reality of your life. My last nugget of wisdom for you to chew on or spit out, no offense taken, is to take the advice of the Eight of Wands and prioritize movement. Trust the wisdom of the Six of Cups and practice living in the present instead of the past. Allow judgment to remind you that in order to awaken, you must be honest about where you've fallen asleep in your life, and have a growth mindset like the Page of Swords, and embrace the messy learning process that leads us to new ideas that can help open doors we have never before even noticed. All right, that's all that I have for you in this part 1 Transits and Tarot episode for June of 2025 on the Soulful of It podcast. In part 2, we'll talk about Mars moving into Virgo, we'll welcome the summer solstice as the sun enters Cancer, and we'll take a look at the Cancer new moon. As always, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to what I have to say about the cards and the cosmos. If you enjoy this episode, please share it with your people. Go give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Yes, it does help. And as always, thank you again for listening, and I will catch you in the next one mid-June.